Okay, guys, well, thank y'all so much for coming tonight. Tonight we're going to talk about lease agreements because we are going to be doing more leases, as crazy as this darn market is. We're going to, and just so you know, if you haven't done any leases, the good news is when you've got tenants, you are not going to have to write the lease agreement. But you are going to need to know what's in the lease agreement and what is acceptable as far as contract compliance goes. Unfortunately, agents that are outside of our agency, a lot of times they just don't know how to write a lease. So, and of course, y'all are the ones that have to edit them, so, or audit them, I should say. And so I'm going to show y'all tonight how to do just that and help you with some of the mistakes that I see a lot. First of all, when you have a listing, you are going to be talking to your landlord about what he wants. You know, some landlords are like, oh, just give me anything, but some landlords have specific things. They want their rent due by the 5th or the 3rd or whatever the case may be. So the good news is you have already, in your listing agreement, you've already talked to the landlord about what he wants in the lease. You know, when the rent's due on the 1st, the late fees are on the 3rd. And what you're going to do is you're going to take the same information that you've discussed with your landlord, and you're just going to transpose it over into the lease agreement. So this will already have been discussed, and we will go from there. So let's go first. Let's go look at the listing that we're going to be putting on, writing a lease on today.
I have a question.
And that is Grace Hall, 12027 Grace Hall. It's leasing for $1,800. It looks like it's in Northwest Houston, if I remember. And let's see here. We always go to agent remarks because that'll tell us what we need to know. Like in this case, refrigerator, dryer, washer and dryer are included. We need the most recent pay stubs, copies of driver's license, and social security. Okay, so we're going to also, we need to see what year it's built because we need to know if we need to include. This is a newer home, so no, we don't. So that's a good thing. And this one is paying 50%. Awesome. And no pets are allowed on this one. Okay, so let's start with our lease.
I'm sorry, can you repeat why we needed to know the year of the home? Because I'm hearing other noise in the background.
I'm gonna mute all in just a second. The reason we need to know the year built is because if it was built before 1978, you have to fill out the lead-based paint addendum. So in this case, it was not, so we don't have to worry about that particular form. Okay, so we are going to start with the landlord's name. We got Larry, landlord, and then we've got Tammy and Tommy, tenant. And you do need to be careful to make sure that you have their legal names because they may tell you a name, but it may not be their legal name. Okay. The address of the property. And then of course you need to always have the legal description. And the way that we get the legal description, we're not going to assume this is the legal description because, and the reason for that is there's not enough space here. So you've got to go to the tax account. And the tax account will give us the legal description. And yes, it happens to be correct. So what I do is copy and paste it. Copy. And I'm going to paste it right there. Okay. So it's going to be in Harris County, and together with the following non-realty property items. I noticed in the listing that the washer and dryer, and refrigerator are included. So we're going to put that in there. Okay. Now the lease agreement. These folks are going to move in on the 19th of June, and it's going to be a year lease. So we always end the lease at the end of the month for the year. So in this case, it would be June 30th of next year.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So you said that if we bring the tenants, we don't have to fill this out? Or is
Correct. The listing.
okay, so like if say we're kind of like we're representing the landlord, we fill it in for the landlord, correct?
Yes, if we are the
Okay.
listing agent, we would write the lease as well as the pet agreement.
Okay.
Okay. Here on the lease renewing, until they get a notice of termination, we always put 30 days before the expiration date. Some landlords, however, are asking for a 60-day notice, and that's certainly acceptable, but the norm at the moment is 30 days. Okay. Also, this is a tricky one. If the lease automatically renews itself on a month-to-month basis, but if you check this one, they have to give notice on the last day of the month. People always forget that. So it's much better if you'll do it on the date designated in the notice, but not sooner than 30 days after the notice is given. So I always check this one. Rent, this is where you put in your monthly rent. How much does the landlord expect every month? And in this particular case, because these folks are going to move in on the 19th, they will pay a full month's rent on move-in. They're going to pay the security deposit before, as soon as they get approved, they're going to pay the security deposit to take it off of the market. But when they move in, no matter what day of the month it is, they're going to pay a full month's rent. The reason that they do that is so very important reason. So we get paid because our commission comes out of that first month's rent. So no matter what day of the month, they are going to pay a full month's rent. And they will typically pay that by cashier's check or money order, and it's going to be payable to the listing broker. That way the broker gets the check and then they can cut out the commissions out of that first month's rent. Okay, so then monthly rent is always due on the first day of each month. You will get tenants who get paid like on the 4th or the 5th, and some landlords will agree that the rent's due on the 5th, but that's not very common. Okay, now here's the tricky one, the prorated rent. Everybody gets confused on this one. So your tenants move in on the 19th, they pay a full month's rent at move-in. Then the following month is when they are going to pay the prorated amount. So on July 1st, they're going to pay the prorated amount of $720. And just if y'all don't know how to prorate rent, let me show you real quick. The way we calculate days for rent. Okay, these guys are moving in on the 19th. Okay. So to prorate rent for a lease, you're going to count how many days, including the move-in date, are in the month. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 12 days left in this month. Then there's 30 days in the month. So we're going to take that monthly rent of $1,800 and divide it by 30 days. And that's going to give us $60 a day. So we're going to take $60 times 12 days, and that is how we come up with that 720.
Mm.
And it's always going to be the number of days in the month that they moved in. I see a lot of errors where they're not doing that. Okay, here under place of payment, this is the landlord's name and address, and it is perfectly acceptable to say Larry Landlord via Zelle or via Chase Pay, because a lot of landlords are, of course, accepting electronic signatures, which is a good thing. It makes everybody's life a little bit easy. Okay. And as far as method of payments go, they will not accept rent in cash. They will typically accept cashier's check, electronic payments, money orders, personal checks, or other means. And you always want to put that the landlord can charge a reasonable fee to process it. This doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while, there's like $1 or $2 charge. Okay. Also, the landlord does require that all of the rent is paid in one payment. So that's saying, no, you can't pay half on the 1st and half on the 15th, because you'll get that question a lot. Okay, late charges. You typically if it's between the 3rd and the 5th that most landlords expect their payment. And then you can do a late charge. I typically do $50 and then $10 a day after that. And what you'll see some other agents outside of our office that will have outrageous late fees. And you just got to rein them in and say, no, that's way too much. That's way too much. You know, like $100 a day. That's just not reasonable. Okay. Return payment. This one I see all the time. In the state of Texas, the maximum that you can charge someone for a return check is $35. So if another agent puts in 50 or 100, that just doesn't fly. So $35 there. Okay. Pets. This part of the lease is they cannot bring, if they bring in a dog and they forget to mention it to the landlord, and yes, this happens all the time, the lease is saying, hey, we can charge you $500 and $25 a day until you get rid of this animal, okay? Or they need to come to terms and put a pet deposit. So this one's important. You'd be surprised how many people forget to mention the 4 dogs or 12 cats or whatever the case may be. Okay, security deposit. The security deposit will be made payable directly to the landlord. Okay, and that can be paid via cashier's check, electronic payment, money order, or any other means acceptable to the landlord. Okay, utilities. This is something that you'll also discuss with the landlord. Is he going to pay for anything? You'd be surprised. Sometimes the garbage is especially one to be on the lookout for, because a lot of times the garbage is included in the landlord's HOA dues. So he may pay for the garbage. But typically, most of the utilities are going to be paid by the tenant. Okay, this is important. Everybody leaves this out. Whoever is going to be both of the tenants, and if they had a child, you would also put Bobby tenant 4 years old, and it is important that we know the age of the tenants. Guest, typically the landlord doesn't care if they've got somebody staying there for less than 14 days. But if they're, somebody is staying more than 14 days, they just need to let them know in an email, say, hey, I've got family in, they're going to be here for the month of May or whatever the case may be. Parking. I always come up with this number depending on how many adults are living in the house. So if there was 3 adults, then I'd have 3 vehicles. You know, or you can also look at the lease application and see how many vehicles the folks have. Okay. Trip charges. What this is for is, let's say your tenant has a plumbing problem and schedules an appointment for 4 o'clock on a Friday, and the plumber shows up and the tenant is nowhere to be found. The plumber, whose time is valuable, is going to charge the landlord a trip fee. So that's usually between $75 and $100, and the landlord can charge that to the tenant. It doesn't happen very often, but it's in there. Okay. Here on the key box, when somebody gives notice that they're going to be moving, they are agreeing that on the last 30 days that a realtor can put a lockbox and start showing the property. And we do that because there are tenants who are like, oh no, I'm not showing nothing. Well, in the lease, if they choose not to allow us to show it, that's fine. But we are also going to charge them $1,800 for that privilege. So, and this is something that needs to be, when you're discussing a lease with a tenant, you need to point this one out because a lot of them have no idea about this provision. So they need to cooperate with the landlord when they give notice. Okay, move-in condition. There will be times where, yeah, there's something that needs to be fixed before they move in. You know, here, perfect example, fix broken window in the kitchen. I would not put cosmetic things here, but things that do need, you know, that are not working. The move-in inventory sheet. This is where we give them 7 days after they move in to provide the inventory and condition form to the landlord. This is something that y'all need to stay out of. What I do is if you send it to them early, they're going to lose it. So I always mark my calendar for the move-in day to email them the inventory and condition form. Now, what's important about this form that you let your tenants know is that it's not to request repairs. It is for, you know, stains on the carpet. There's a scratch on the countertop. If they do have repairs that are needed, then they definitely need on an email or a separate piece of paper, they need to request those repairs in writing. This is not the place. There we go. The inventory and condition form is not a request for repairs. And I'm not going throughout the whole lease tonight, guys. I'm just emphasizing on what is needed when you fill out a lease agreement. Okay, yard maintenance. This is regarding that the tenant needs to water the lawn, and the best term that I've seen used is as needed to maintain a healthy lawn. And then here we're going to decide who is going to take care of the lawn. Most of the time, it's the tenant. He's going to take care of it, you know, unless he says, oh, no, I've got a lawn guy that I want to use. And then we would select this. But most of the time, it's the tenant that is taking care of the yard. Okay. Smoking. Smoking is a no-no. It is never, unless your landlord says it's permitted, but I haven't seen smoking permitted in on a rental home in many, many, many years. Okay. Repair request. This is super important. The tenant has got to have a way to contact the landlord for repairs. And this is us giving him the landlord's phone number. There are some landlords that say, yes, I'll provide you a refrigerator, but if it breaks down, I'm not going to replace it or repair it. That is a landlord being cheap. And I try to persuade my landlords. It's like, look, they're paying you $1,800 a month. You can fix the refrigerator. A refrigerator is a necessary. Okay, let's see here. Okay, special provisions. We do not put anything in special provisions because it is considered us practicing law, and we are not attorneys. So avoid this. Landlords are notorious for wanting to put in special verbiage in here, and we need to advise them not to. And if they do want us to, then they have got to do it with the assistance of an attorney. Okay. Subletting. This seldom happens, where a tenant is going to say, hey, I got to move, but my buddy over here, Joe Blow, wants to take over my lease. Most landlords will not agree to it. But if for some reason they do, they are going to charge the current tenant 1 month's rent to do that. And that's what that says. So these are always 100%. Okay. Addenda. These, it just depends on the property. Like addendum regarding lead-based paint. If this home was built before 1978, yeah, we would check this. But the things that we always check is the inventory and condition form, the agreement between brokers, because that's how we get paid. That's the other agent saying, yeah, I'll pay you your half. And then a lot of people miss this one, is the lease application. The only time that this lease application is not checked is if they apply online. And I see that a lot. Okay. And in this case, it would be a pet agreement. Okay. Here, it's important to give your tenants and landlords email addresses so they can communicate between the two of them. Okay, this is a super important one. If in the event that everybody in the house died, we need to have a contact number or email address, preferably both, for who to contact so that they can get into the house and they can remove the people's belongings. This is absolutely required. And when you see on somebody's application that it's not there, kick it back to them, because our contract compliance is going to request a minimum of a phone number or an email address. Okay, this is another super important one. If you have not heard, Texas United Realty, we do not manage rentals. The reason for that is we do not have the insurance for it. So in the event that you get an investor, and it happens all the time, he's like, hey, can you manage this for me? And you're like, no, I wish I could, but I can't. However, I do have this great property management company called PMI Realty, or PMI Management. And they do a great job, and I will have them call you. Then you call the folks at PMI and give them the landlord's information. And then as soon as that the property management agreement is signed, you will get a check for $250. So easy money, easy money. But as far as the lease goes, it's always will not act as property manager for the landlord. Okay. And then property will be managed either by the landlord or the property manager for the landlord. And if there is a property manager, then we've got to give their contact information here. And that is how you write a lease. Also, you'll use the same information when you've got a tenant and the listing agent sends you the information and it doesn't look quite right. You can come back and reference this as well. Okay. Any questions?
No.
Again, when you're the listing agent, you'll have the answers for about 90% of this that you've already discussed with the landlord. Okay, I think some of y'all are muted. So let's see, I'm going to unmute you. So can y'all?
I have a questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So my question is a little bit different. So, for example, I have one of client. So I leasing her house, single family house, 11 months ago. So the tenant want to continue for rent for this property 1 more years with the landlord. So do we need to fill out for this residential lease form again for that both parties sign again?
No, there is a lease renewal form that you can find in Dotloop, and it's much easier. It's a 2-page document, and it's much easier than having to fill out the whole thing.
Okay, so do we get a commission again for the contract? No.
Unfortunately, no.
Oh, okay. So we can download from download and then give the tenant or give the landlord.
Yes.
Then okay.
Yes.
Okay. What kind of form?
What kind of form?
What kind of form?
It's I think it's called a lease renewal form.
Lease renewal. Okay.
Renewal.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you so
pleasure.
much. Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay. Any other questions, guys?
Since we're on the topic of rental, how does the apartment locator process work if we want to try that?
Oh, it's so much easier and it pays so much better. When you do an apartment lease, and if you haven't signed up already, you need to get signed up with a database called apartmentdata.com. It is $50 it's a one-time $50 fee, and then you have access to the website for the rest of your career. So it's money well spent. But the documents that you need for an apartment lease are so much easier than for a single family home. And if you'll look, if you'll look on the file checklist, the only forms that you need to get your tenants to sign is the IABS and the broker notice. So those are the only 2 forms that are required to be sent. And then you do need to send the apartment invoice as well as our W-9 to the apartment complex. And I don't do it before they move in because it'll get lost. I always check my calendar and say, send apartment invoice for Joe Smith on their move-in date. And y'all have to keep in mind too, apartments pay a lot better than single family homes. We're lucky to get 50% on single family homes Whereas apartments, I mean, you can get 100%, you can get 150%. I had one of my agents recently got a $4,000 commission, and he didn't even have to take the guy to show him. So I would be advertising apartments on Facebook Marketplace. I mean, go and find out what the commission is for these high-end properties. That's easy money. And easy paperwork.
Thank you so much for the information.
Of course, of course. Okay, guys, anybody else? No? Okay.
Yes, I do. I have a question. So you said you can advertise the apartments on Facebook. What was it?
Marketplace.
Marketplace. Okay. And what is the apartment data? What kind of website is that for?
It's for apartment locators.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and it's a $50 one-time setup fee. It pays for itself over and over and over again.
Oh, wow.
I've made some really good money leasing apartments. In fact, I was an apartment locator for 3 years. But the cool thing about apartment data is it also tells you what each property is paying on commission. You know, because there's some that are paying 100%, 150%. Then there's others that are paying $100.
Okay.
So, if you're interested in apartment data services, if you will check our training folder, there is a webinar put on by yours truly about how to use the website.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I've quite a few of my agents have been doing really well with leasing apartments. And the thing about leasing apartments, you can just send them a list and say, okay, this property has a 1-bedroom upstairs, available for July 1st. And you can just send them the list, and then you can pray that they put your name on the application, or you can go and escort them. If you escort them, your chances of getting paid are 100%. If you don't escort them, your chances are about 50%.
Oh, okay.
So, but I mean, for that kind of money, I mean, if you're making, even $1,000, go look at, 3 or 4 apartment complex, that's good money.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, I highly recommend advertising, especially some of these nicer, higher end properties.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, anybody else? No? Okay. Well, if you have any questions, feel free. You can always feel free to call me. My name is Stacy Foster. My number is 713-705-7837. Okay, guys. Well, I'm going to let you go. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you. You have a good one too.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
y'all.
evening. Okay, bye.